the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. Corruption charges ensnare the Israeli foreign minister just weeks ahead of elections there, the Jewish angle on A Christmas Story, podcasting The Portion, and more of the Jewish news that's changing your world right now in this episode of the Week in Review. Hello, and welcome to the Jewish Channel's Week in Review. I'm Stephen I. Weiss. If you were wondering what role the controversial far-right Israeli foreign minister Avigdor Lieberman would play in the Israeli elections next month, you can stop wondering. Lieberman resigned as foreign minister on Friday, with many expecting he'll soon be indicted for fraud and breach of trust. This makes Lieberman the third high-ranking Israeli government official to resign in the past 5 years amid criminal allegations. Former President Moshe Katsav resigned in 2007 and is now serving a 7-year prison term on charges including rape and obstruction of justice. Ehud Olmert resigned as prime minister in 2009 and was indicted on charges of fraud, breach of trust, and more, but was only eventually convicted on one charge of breach of trust, making it possible he might return to elected office. Lieberman, however, has only resigned his foreign minister post. He has retained his seat in the Knesset and may well choose to run for re-election to the Israeli parliament. Even with this potential looming indictment, Lieberman has escaped a much larger scandal regarding money laundering and fraud that was investigated for more than 12 years, but was eventually dropped in his pursuit of Lieberman. Lieberman's public statement suggests he believes he can achieve a plea deal prior to the elections. I believe that the citizens of the State of Israel are entitled to go to the polling stations after this matter has already been resolved, meaning after a legal decision has been made before the election, and I will be able to continue to serve the State of Israel, he wrote on his Facebook page. This Lieberman surprise on the criminal allegations front comes just weeks after he and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu surprised Israel and the world by announcing an alliance for the January elections. It's possible that his resignation and potential indictment could perhaps serve as a political anchor around the neck of Netanyahu now that their election hopes are so thoroughly intertwined. In a statement, Lieberman was dismissive of the potential impact of the potential charges, saying that he has been facing allegations since 1996 and, quote, "Since then until today, not a day has passed without me being referred to as a suspect, being under investigation, being an intelligence target. This has been one long and rolling case, receiving a different title every now and then." The specific allegations here, though, refer to recent alleged conduct. Allegations include the claim that he promoted an ambassador in exchange for the ambassador giving Lieberman confidential information about Israeli law enforcement's investigations of Lieberman. To this point, the election has been seen as almost a given for the Netanyahu-Lieberman party slate, with the two of them combining in polls to represent 2/3 of the votes needed to govern, and ultra-Orthodox parties able to complete a majority coalition rather easily. That ticket would have to face some very large voter defections for the scandal to have a material impact on Netanyahu's chances. Of course, most Jewish leaders outside of Israel don't have to face popular elections, and the United Kingdom's Jewish community has just settled on its new religious leader after a multi-year effort to identify a successor to Chief Rabbi Jonathan Sacks. Rabbi Ephraim Mirvis is to be the new Chief Rabbi of the United Kingdom. He's the former Chief Rabbi of Ireland and has been helming Finchley Synagogue. He'll be the 11th Chief Rabbi of the UK. Interestingly, his name was rarely, if ever, seen tossed into the rumor mill about who would succeed Sacks. Many publications and others had suggested some American rabbis were leading contenders, including New York's Rabbi Meir Soloveichik, who delivered the invocation at the 2012 Republican National Convention, and Atlanta's Rabbi Moshe Broid, who once led the Beit Din of America. The outgoing Sacks has been seen as a leader in advancing Jewish thought, with several books that are widely cited. But when it comes to Jewish learning, so many new approaches are available. One of them is a live podcast going through the Bible story by story. Christian Needham reports.
Noah was 600 years old when he spent basically a year in this box taking care of every single animal on the planet. That's crazy, but it would also probably make a really good sitcom.
The story of Noah received a humorous interpretation this week from writer David Tuckman during the third episode of his new monthly podcast, OMG WTF Bible. TJC sat in for the episode's live performance at Parkside Lounge on Manhattan's Lower East Side and talked with Tuckman about his approach to interpreting the Hebrew Bible.
I'm writing this translation of the entire Bible. We're doing it chapter by chapter. So each month I have a special guest read the original translation of the Hebrew while I make jokes and comments as we go through the chapter.
This month's guest was stop-motion animator Jessica Polanecki, who played straight man to Tuckman's comedic observations about one of the Bible's most apocalyptic portions.
So tonight it's pretty appropriate given that the Mayan apocalypse is supposed to be on Friday night. The episode goes live on Saturday, so we're doing Noah and the Ark, the whole story of the flood and of God wiping out the entire world.
Tuckman said his take on the Bible was shaped by the Orthodox Jewish education of his youth.
So I went to yeshiva for the first 18 years of my life. I went to Yeshiva of Central Queens, and I went to high school on Long Island, a Yeshiva high school on Long Island. So we studied the Torah all the time, every day. We had half Hebrew studies in the morning and English studies in the afternoon, but we never really went through the entire story in a methodical way, and that's what I'm excited to do here.
That includes the various translations of the Hebrew word for Noah's floating container of animals.
The word in Hebrew is teva. Everyone translates it as ark, but I used box. Because except for the Indiana Jones movies, this word ark is hardly ever used anywhere that isn't the Bible. It's used for the Ark of the Covenant, and it's used for Noah's Ark.
Then there's the word amma, or the unit of measurement given for Noah's box.
So you might know ammas as cubits. They're ancient units of measurement. When I was younger, I remember being told that they were about a yard long. According to my extensive research on Wikipedia, it looks like an amma is about 20 inches, which means the volume of Noah's big box was about 2 million cubic feet. To put that in perspective, the Titanic was 5 million cubic feet large, which means that this was about 2/5 the size of Titanic, which means that it was a really, really big box for this one dude to build.
To hear more from David Tuckman about his new free podcast, OMG WTF Bible, please tune into the full broadcast edition of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Christian. When it comes to telling Jewish stories in new ways, A Christmas Story isn't what first comes to mind, but a songwriter on the new Broadway show is Jewish, and he shared his story with Meredith Gansman.
There was Rodgers and Hammerstein, there was Kander and Ebb, and now the writing team behind the new Broadway hit musical A Christmas Story is Pasek and Paul. Perhaps one of the least Jewish movies, A Christmas Story, is making its Broadway debut this holiday season. And nice Jewish boy Benj Pasek of the musical songwriting team Pasek and Paul is also making his Broadway debut. Not a bad Hanukkah present to have received.
For like a Hanukkah gift or whatever, to be like, come see my show on Broadway. It's very cool to do that. In the last month, I've been able to say to all of my mom's friends, yeah, I write Broadway shows. So it's very exciting.
With his show on Broadway, Pasek couldn't be with his family in Philadelphia for Hanukkah, but his mother still made sure he celebrated with them.
We wanted to light the Hanukkah candles with you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'asa nisim l'avoteinu bayamim ha'hem ha'azman hazeh.
Okay, so every year when I don't go home for Hanukkah, my mom calls me and reads me a Hanukkah story like we did as kids and sings me the prayers just to make sure that I know that I'm Jewish. I remember, Mom, I love you.
In developing A Christmas Story over the last 3 years with his writing partner Justin Paul, Pasek was also always away during the high holidays. Yes, cue another phone call from Benj Pasek's mom.
My mom is always calling me and she's like, where are you going to temple? Like, where are you going to shul this year? And I'm giving her a New York accent even though she doesn't really have one, but you know, I feel like you have to do that when you have a Jewish mom. She's like, where are you going to shul for, you know, Yom Kippur? And I'm like, Mom, I'm writing Christmas jingles. Like, I'm really busy. So I will try to make it. Maybe I'll fast, but I gotta write these Christmas songs.
Although Pasek doesn't celebrate Christmas, he did understand A Christmas Story's protagonist, Ralphie's longing for a certain Christmas present, a Red Ryder BB gun.
Total Hanukkah present, the one. I mean, I've had a lot of terrible gifts. Like one year my dad gave me an alligator skull. I was like, Dad, that's just crazy. But this one year I remember, I was maybe like 8 or 9, and all that I wanted was a Game Boy because that was, you know, it. That was it. And I like begged all year, and I finally got the Game Boy, and I freaked out. And you know, it's the same thing. It's like being Jewish or being Christian. You know, we're Americans, so we all want a gift around December.
To hear more from Benj Pasek and A Christmas Story, tune in to the full broadcast version of the Week in Review.
Thank you, Meredith. Finally, Salon.com editor-at-large Joan Walsh is of Irish Catholic heritage, but her marriage to a Jewish man and raising a daughter in a dual-religion household makes her an example of what increasingly is what the Jewish community looks like. And she has some things to say about what political groupings look like in her new book, What's the Matter with White People?, which examines how different ethnic identities are affecting American politics. She recently stopped by for an interview, and here are the highlights. So to clear up some confusion, I should start off with the title of your book. It doesn't only mean what's the matter with white people, it also means what's the matter with white people.
Exactly. You got it. You got the inflection. I think it might be an East Coast thing. Yeah, I mean, people have really focused on the first meaning of the title, which is kind of like what's the matter with conservative white people, I suppose, and why are 90% of the Republican Party white in a country that's now only 62% white. So that's one meaning. But I think there's also a meaning that in which I'm speaking to liberals and sort of my tribe, which is we can generalize and stereotype white people in ways that are kind of unwelcoming and unforgiving. And although the election results disappointed me as a white person, because I hoped more of my people would vote for President Obama, I think they also showed us that you can't generalize. He did get younger white voters. I mean, I consider white Jewish people who are white. They may not be white, but you know what I mean? It's like he got 70% of the Jewish vote. He did well with certain blocks of white people and not others. So, you know, I think we need to learn to talk about race in a different way.
And at the core of your book is this basic question of what is dividing white people as voters in a way that didn't in the 70s, or that started to in the 70s, but that prior to that wasn't really coming apart in terms of that people for the most part were voting along lines of their own economic interests, and then and now we have where the largest growth in Republican registrations over the past several years has been white people who don't have a college education and don't have high income. So basically the people who would benefit the most from government programs. And
who did, you know, from the New Deal through the mid-70s. I think two things happened. I think first of all, working class white people got frightened by the 60s and the 70s, sometimes for good reason. I mean, I'm a strong feminist. I think the civil rights movement was the greatest movement of my lifetime. The anti-war movement stopped an unjust war. Those were good things. At the same time, I think there was chaos. There was sort of rising unrest. Crime rose, divorce rates rose, and I think I saw in my own family that there was a sense of the country is unraveling, families are coming apart, and they harked back to the golden age that I talk about. So there's that. There's also the fact that I think the Democratic Party, in some Democrats moved away from their own economic populist roots. And so some working class whites, the famous Reagan Democrats, perceived the government, the Democratic Party in particular, as abandoning them. Now, they would say that the government abandoned them for minorities, but in fact, I would say that the Democrats abandoned them for big business. And so Democrats colluded in some of the policies that unraveled the social, not just the safety net, because we think of the safety net as being for poor people, but the safety net that actually created and kept a middle class intact. So it's complicated. At this point, though, I think there is a fear of demographic change. The National Journal has a project that looks at demography, and they found that 2/3 of white people who are afraid of the country's diversifying voted for Romney, and whites who are comfortable with it, this is America, this is what we've always done, we've mixed it up, went 3-2 for Obama. So, you know, there's an element of feeling abandoned, and then there is an element of racial fear and cultural discomfort that I don't know that there's any getting around at this point.
You can see the full interview with Joan Walsh under the weekly news category on the Jewish Channel On Demand on cable. That's all for this week. From all of us here at the Jewish Channel, be well. The Jewish Channel is available on cable. Time Warner Cable Channel 528, IO Optimum Channel 291, RCN Channel 268, Bright House Channel 330, Verizon Fios Channel 900, Cox Channel 1, Frontier Communications, and now on Comcast Cable in the on-demand menu under Premium Channels. For more information, visit TJC.